Hello, space friends. Captain Snuggles here, bringing you another episode of X4 Oversimplified. This game is insanely complicated. Any video less than 4 hours long is probably oversimplified, so I can slap that label on anything, but I really am going to try to boil things down to the bare minimum, and then boil them down some more. This series is mainly meant for new players, not as a comprehensive guide, but just as a solid foundation to lay the groundwork for future learning. This is an exciting episode for me, because we have finally finished the basic background info and are moving on to actual gameplay guides. This first one will be about my favorite aspect of gameplay, which is fleets. This might seem like an odd place to start the gameplay guides, but first off, I just really like fleets, and second, fleets are not nearly as advanced as you might think. A lot of the existing advice about fleet management is focused on big, expensive, ultra-late game fleets, but basic early game fleets can be just as impactful, if not more so, and so that's where we're going to start. This will let us enjoy the benefits of fleets right at the start of the game, and it will also give us some foundational knowledge that we'll use later as we start thinking about intermediate and advanced fleets. I am not going to give you specific recommendations on fleet compositions, because I think copying someone else's fleet setup takes a lot of the fun out of it. Instead, I'm going to focus on foundational knowledge that will let you experiment with ships, equipment, and tactics to create the fleet that's right for you. I was going to ask the veterans not to post their fleet setups in the comments, but I know that's a losing battle. So instead, I'm going to ask the new players not to pay attention to any fleet setups posted in the comments. We'll talk about them in a later video, but first, we've got to cover the basics. Let's start with the very most foundational knowledge, the purpose of fleets. Fleets are used to automate ship management, to a greater or lesser extent. Some people create fully automated fleets so that they just have to issue general orders, attack, retreat, and so forth, in the style of a grand 4X strategy game like Stellaris. Other people use fleets to group their ships in a way that makes them easier to micromanage, so that they can rapidly issue orders in combat in the style of an RTS like StarCraft. Either way, the purpose of the fleet is to automate ship management. As with all automation, you give up a little bit of effectiveness in order to save yourself some time. Fleet AI does have shortcomings, but if you set them up right, fleets work well enough to handle 95% of scenarios, letting you focus your personal intervention on that remaining 5%. The key is setting them up right. So, how are fleets set up? Well, they have a fleet commander, and that fleet commander has one or more groups of subordinate ships. Those groups can have subgroups, those subgroups can have sub-subgroups, and so on. A fleet might just be one fighter and one wingman, it might be a group of merchant ships and their escorts, or it might be a massive supercarrier task force with a complex hierarchy of wings and groups and squadrons. The game calls all of those things a fleet, because they all have at least one subordinate assigned to a commander. So, since those subordinate assignments are the defining feature of fleets, let's look at them in depth. Each commander can have up to 10 subordinate groups, and each of those groups can have one of these 6 options. There are a few others, but those are specialized and generally self-explanatory. These 6 are the core of your group assignments. They're all unique, but speaking generally, they can be subdivided based on whether they're proactive or reactive, as well as on their operational range. Defend and attack are the 2 basic orders. They're both reactive orders, meaning that another ship has to do something in order to trigger them. Defend, as you might expect, is triggered when the commander or a member of the same group is attacked. The defending ships will attempt to shoot down the attacker, and that's all there is to it. As a result, this tends to be a fairly short-range order. Defending ships tend to stay grouped fairly close to their commander. The Attack for Commander assignment causes subordinates to attack whatever target the commander is actively attacking. It's triggered when the commander chooses a target, not when the commander begins to actively fire its weapons. As a result, this allows the subordinates to engage faster and spread out more compared to the defend order, which gives it a medium engagement range overall. This is also the only command that consistently allows subordinates to attack stations. Next up, we have Intercept and Bombard. These are both proactive orders, meaning no other ship has to do anything to trigger them. There just has to be a target within range. Specifically, there has to be a target within the commander's radar range, which is usually 40 kilometers. Additionally, that target has to be a particular type of ship. Intercept targets small and medium ships. Bombard targets large and extra-large ships. This is where a lot of English speakers get confused, because the word bombard is heavily associated with shore bombardment, leading people to believe that the bombard command is meant for attacking stations. It is not. Ships assigned to bombard will completely ignore stations. They only attack capital ships, with one minor exception that we'll discuss later. Otherwise, bombard is useless for station attacks. Attack is the only order that consistently targets stations. Don't let the word choice confuse you. Back to the matter at hand. Again, the intercept and bombard assignments both cause the subordinate to engage targets within the commander's radar range, making them both proactive, long-range assignments. And that brings us to the weird ones. Follow is self-explanatory. Groups assigned to follow will just follow the commander. They'll ignore fleet formations, they'll ignore what the fleet is doing, they'll ignore what the commander is doing, aside from movement. They do nothing besides follow, unless something triggers their individual behavior settings. As a result, this assignment is very short range, extremely reactive, and very niche. This is the one I use least, by far, although it's a nice option to have in some very, very specialized scenarios. The other weird assignment is Mimic. This is another one that confuses people. The Mimic assignment does not mimic everything the commander does. It only mimics the commander's default behavior, and it doesn't even always do that. The subordinate has to meet all the prerequisites for the commander's default behavior, and it can never mimic repeat orders. The subordinate will not act in direct conjunction with the commander. It doesn't even have to be anywhere nearby. They can be anywhere within the anchor space of the default behavior, even on opposite ends of the map if there is no anchor space. The main purpose of Mimic is to simplify the assignment of new ships to activities that involve lots of ships operating independently. Usually that means non-combat activities like trading and mining, although there are a few military applications as well. This is the most proactive and longest range assignment. There is one more aspect of fleet setup to talk about, which is formations. Formations are set from the commander's behavior tab. The fleet commander sets the highest level formation for the fleet, but if there are multiple layers of groups within the fleet, each group commander can also have its own formation, which can give you compound formations like a big circle made up of small triangles. The main thing they affect is engagement order. Usually the ships in front enter combat first. Some formations put the subordinates in front of the commander, some put them behind, and some put them all around. Each formation also requires the commander to have a certain skill level. Honestly, a lot of the best formations are available at low skill. The higher skill ones just look cooler. Point guard, triangle, and circle are my personal picks for putting subordinates in front, behind, and around the commander, respectively. And that covers the fundamentals of fleet setup. I know that was a big info dump, so let's look at a nice concrete example. We're going to put all that knowledge together to create a fleet that's custom tailored to a unique scenario. Here's our case study. I've started a game as a crusader of the Holy Order of the Pontifex, with lore-accurate enemy factions. Bad guys everywhere. Eventually, we want to purge the galaxy of all heretics, but first we need to build up our forces and our finances. I put together a small assortment of ships that one might reasonably buy or steal in this scenario, and now I want to create a fleet that will generate steady income while also fending off attacks from the Xenon, Argon, Paranid, and pirates. I have one capital ship, a large miner, the Chthonios. It's going to be our fleet commander because it's relatively tough and relatively stationary, a nice stable backbone. I've looked at the local resource demand and determined that ore mining in Holy Vision will be my best option for now, so I'll set the Chthonios to auto-mine ore there. I'm going to set the 3 Plutus medium miners to mimic the Chthonios. I have resource probes out, which means all the miners should gravitate toward the same areas, even under the relatively long-range mimic command. We don't have enough military ships to reliably escort each miner individually, so we need to set our escort up in a way that can cover all of the miners at once. Medium miners aren't particularly tough, so we don't want to wait until they're attacked. We want the escorts to be proactive. Also, the miners will spread out somewhat, meaning we want an escort assignment with decent range. Proactive and long range points us towards intercept and bombard. Looking at the threats we'll be facing, they're basically all small and medium ships, so our primary escort command will be intercept. We could just put all our military ships in a single intercept wing and call it a day, but with our small number of ships, that could lead to our fighters getting isolated and picked off one by one. Instead, we want to concentrate our limited firepower, so we're going to layer our escort wings. We'll assign the 2 Nemesis corvettes to intercept for the Chthonios, and then we'll assign 2 fighters to escort each Nemesis. We want the fighters to act in conjunction with the corvettes, which means we don't want a proactive assignment, which means we want either defend, attack, or follow. Follow does nothing for us, so we need to choose between defend and attack. Remember, the main goal here is to protect the miners, which means we want to take down targets as quickly as possible, so we want our fighters to be reasonably aggressive, which means we're going to set them to attack for their Nemesis commanders. So, there's our fleet command structure. An intercept escort wing comprised of 2 attack groups, providing cover for a mimic mining wing. Now we just have to figure out the formations. We don't know where attacks will come from relative to the Chthonios, so we'll want to keep the corvettes in a relatively neutral position, so I'll choose the circle formation. As for the fighters, they're much less tanky than the corvettes, so in an ideal world, the corvettes would enter the engagement immediately before them and absorb the first wave of enemy fire. To maximize the chances of that happening, we'll choose a formation that puts the fighters just behind the corvettes. That formation will be triangle. And there we go. That's our fleet. While we watch that fleet in action, let's talk advantages and disadvantages. What advantages does this give us compared to just issuing individual orders? There are 3 big ones. First, it's really easy to expand our mining operation. If we get new ships, we can just add them to the Mimic Wing, rather than giving them each a separate default behavior. Second, it's really easy to relocate. We'll eventually saturate the local market in Holy Vision, and when that happens, we can just switch the mining system and the default behavior of the Chthonios, and the entire fleet will seamlessly relocate. We can also switch from ore to silicon and back, almost as seamlessly. And third, similarly, the escorts will automatically move with the miners as they shift around within the system to find the best mining locations. If we were just using individual orders or multiple smaller fleets, we would have to constantly tweak the patrol areas of the escorts to keep pace with the miners. Those were the 3 big advantages of this fleet setup. There are also 2 big disadvantages. First, the escorts are tied to the Chthonios, and although the Chthonios is the core of the mining formation, it will sometimes still fly away to sell its ore, which will briefly leave the medium miners vulnerable. Giving the escorts individual orders could improve their coverage, as long as you can keep up with the micromanagement. The second disadvantage is that this fleet is restricted to mining a single resource in a single system at a time. Even if we had better captains that could branch out more, Doing so would move them beyond the coverage of the escorts, so with this fleet, we really have to stick to the one system, one resource setup. The advantages definitely outweigh the disadvantages here, and we can also look for ways to mitigate the disadvantages as we expand the fleet. There we go. That's how you set up fleets. We're just about done here, but I do have a couple of things to add about how to command fleets. Orders given to any commander will filter down to all of their subordinates, and all of their subordinates, etc., with the behavior of all subordinate groups determined by their assignment. Additionally, any subunit of the fleet can be given its own orders, down to the individual ship level. I can select this fighter and send it off on its own mission, or I can select this group commander and send the whole group off on its own mission. Those ships will continue to follow your orders until the orders are complete, or until you tell the fleet commander to recall subordinates. There are also a couple of orders that are completely unique to fleets. The big ones are Coordinate Attack and Position Defense. Position Defense is only available on carrier fleets, which puts it a bit beyond the scope of this video, but generally it allows you to set up customized patrol routes for the carrier subordinates. Coordinate Attack is worth talking about a bit more, because it's available on all military fleets, and it can be a source of confusion because it sometimes bends the rules of subordinate assignments. When you order your fleet commander to coordinate an attack against a target, your commander will initiate a long-term, large-scale battle against not just the target you selected, but also that target's whole fleet. Your commander evaluates the opposing fleet, deploys all available ships based on their group assignments, and will keep attacking, regrouping, and redeploying until the entire enemy fleet is destroyed. Here's the part that probably confuses people. If there is no available task for a ship based on its group assignment, the commander might give it a new temporary assignment, usually just an attack or defend order. For example, if you order a coordinated attack against a station, part of your fleet is set to bombard, and there are no enemy capital ships around, the bombardment group might be sent to attack the station, despite stations not being a valid target for the bombard assignment. If I had to guess, I'd say that's the reason why there's still so much confusion about the bombard command. Again, that was just one example. Coordinate Attack can modify other assignments against other targets as well. Fair warning, it can be a little janky, but it is generally better than those ships doing nothing. And that's as advanced as we're going to get in this episode. Fleet setup really isn't that complicated. Fleets can become complicated as you increase the diversity of their ship types and the complexity of their command structure, and there is some fine-tuning you can do to fully optimize your fleets, but that should all be fairly easy to grasp once you really understand these fundamentals. In an upcoming episode, we'll discuss the roles of various ship and weapon types in your fleet compositions, and with that knowledge, plus what we covered here, you should be well prepared to craft fleets to meet your individual needs at any point in the game. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll tune in next time. And until then, this is Captain Snuggles, signing off.